In the opening days of Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the world watched in stunned disbelief as satellite images revealed a vision that looked as if it had been lifted straight from the darkest chapters of the Cold War. A massive, 40-mile-long column of Russian military hardware, tanks, armored vehicles, rocket launchers, artillery pieces, fuel trucks, and supply convoys stretched from the Belarusian border all the way toward Kyiv. It moved like a steel serpent, winding relentlessly south, its scale so enormous that analysts struggled to process what they were seeing. This, according to Russia's high command, was the decisive blow. A lightning strike meant to be the spearhead of a three-day victory. A bold thrust that would crack Ukraine's defenses, seize its capital, decapitate its government, and install a Kremlin-friendly regime before the world could mount a meaningful response. On screens across the globe, the convoy projected raw 21st century military might. Its sheer presence was designed to intimidate, to make the fall of Kyiv appear inevitable. But the terrifying illusion concealed the fatal truth. Underneath its armored skin, Russia's war machine was rotting, and soon, the entire world would see it. Just miles from its final objective, this supposedly unstoppable juggernaut did the unthinkable. It stopped. Not in a dramatic, thunderous clash, not in an ambush, not in a decisive showdown, but in a quiet, grinding collapse, brought on by its own dysfunction. What had been presented as a symbol of Russian military strength rapidly decomposed into what may be the most humiliating traffic jam in modern history. A 40-mile monument to systemic failure, incompetence, and breathtaking miscalculation. This is the story of how a superpower's grand invasion plan crumbled before the real battle even began. It's a story of hubris, logistical chaos, environmental reality, corruption, and the extraordinary effectiveness of Ukrainian improvisation. It's also a timeless reminder that wars are not won by headlines, by bluster, or even by raw firepower. They are won or lost by logistics, discipline, and the ability to sustain an army in motion. To understand how Russia's great convoy could fall apart so completely, you must first understand the mindset that created it. The Kremlin's invasion plan was not built on strategy. It was constructed on wishful thinking. Russia's top leadership believed, genuinely and fatally, that Ukraine would collapse like a house of cards. They assumed Ukrainian soldiers would surrender, that citizens would welcome them as liberators, and that Kyiv's government, portrayed for years in Russian propaganda as fragile and illegitimate, would simply vanish at the first sign of pressure. This wasn't a military assessment, it was a delusion. Captured Russian documents and interrogations of surrendering soldiers confirmed the scale of the miscalculation. The invasion force carried plans for a three-day operation. Some units even carried their parade uniforms, expecting to march triumphantly through a conquered capital. Those uniforms remain unworn to this day, symbols of how profoundly the Kremlin misunderstood both Ukraine and modern warfare. The 40-mile convoy was a physical manifestation of that arrogance. Roughly 15,000 troops, accompanied by staggering quantities of ammunition, fuel, and supplies, funneled into a single narrow artery. It was meant to surge forward and smother Kyiv in one overwhelming strike. Analysts around the world predicted that the city's fall was imminent. Russia's forces seemed enormous, relentless, and unstoppable, until the moment they weren't. Just days after entering Ukrainian territory, the convoy's momentum evaporated. On March 2nd, Pentagon officials described it as stalled, a tame word that didn't begin to capture the scale of the disaster. Satellite imagery revealed a frozen ribbon of armor stretching mile after mile, unmoving and exposed. Vehicles were clumped together in disorganized masses, trucks jammed beside anti-aircraft systems, Armored personnel carriers wedged between tank columns, artillery stacked next to supply vehicles. It was a logistical nightmare, a perfect target, and a textbook example of how not to invade a country. For the Russian soldiers trapped inside it, conditions bordered on surreal. Many had been told they would be home within days. Instead, they found themselves stuck in hostile territory with dwindling supplies. They had brought only 3 days of food, and many trucks had carried more ammunition than fuel. Engines ran dry, heaters went cold. Young conscripts huddled inside vehicles, uncertain, hungry, and desperate for direction that never came. Rumors spread, morale plummeted, and the questions, whispered inside those dark, armored hulls, became more frantic. Why aren't we moving? Where are our officers? Where is the fuel? Where is the food? The truth was grim. The Russian army had not been defeated by a superior force. It had been defeated by its own delusions and by the rot within its own logistical system. Fuel shortages weren't an accident. They were the result of decades of corruption. Russia's supply chain had long been plagued by theft, falsified records, and shoddy equipment. Diesel meant for frontline units was siphoned off and sold on the black market. Trucks were poorly maintained and fitted with low-quality tires that disintegrated under strain. Many vehicles hadn't been started in years before being sent into combat. The army that arrived in Ukraine was not the modernized force Russia claimed it to be. It was an unprepared institution held together with duct tape, lies, and wishful thinking. Then there was the mud, the infamous Rasputitsa, the seasonal thaw that turns Ukrainian soil into a thick, sucking morass, arrived right on schedule. Frozen ground gave way to deep mud that swallowed vehicles whole. Russian drivers were forced to remain on paved roads, turning the convoy into a single, predictable bottleneck stretching for miles. Any vehicle that broke down, ran out of fuel, or lost a tire became a barricade. Those barricades multiplied until the entire column was immobilized. And yet, even all of that wasn't the convoy's greatest vulnerability. Its greatest vulnerability was its complete lack of flexibility. Russia's logistics system followed a rigid, top-down Soviet push model, in which supplies are pushed forward on a predetermined schedule, regardless of actual battlefield conditions. When the invasion failed to end in 3 days, the entire system collapsed like a poorly built stage set. There was no capacity to adapt, no mechanism to respond to urgent requests, no flexibility for sudden change. Ukraine saw all of this clearly, and Ukraine acted decisively. The stalled convoy was not a threat. It was an opportunity, a 40-mile shooting gallery. Ukrainians didn't need to destroy every tank or truck. They only needed to destroy the right ones, the fuel trucks, the soft targets, the logistical lifelines. Small Ukrainian teams armed with javelins, NLAWs, and RPGs emerged from forests, fired, and vanished. Drones provided real-time targeting. Civilians armed with smartphones reported movements and positions. Artillery units struck immobilized vehicles with terrifying precision. And the Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 drone, gliding quietly above the battlefield, became a symbol of Ukraine's asymmetric brilliance. Its missile strikes ripped through command vehicles, air defense systems, and fuel tankers. Each fiery explosion sent shockwaves through a convoy already teetering on the edge of psychological collapse. Russian soldiers soon lived in constant fear. Death could come from anywhere. From a drone they couldn't see, a missile fired from a forest, or an artillery strike called in by a farmer with an iPhone. The convoy wasn't just stalled, it was being hunted. By mid-March, Russia's grand advance had degraded into chaos. Vehicles veered off the main road, hiding in tree lines and villages. Columns fragmented. Units became lost. Officers struggled to maintain control. The spear meant to pierce Kyiv had become a broken relic scattered across Ukrainian mud. By the end of March, Russia had no choice but to retreat from the entire northern front. The withdrawal was not orderly, it was a rout. Ukraine declared the Kyiv region fully liberated on April 2nd. The rusting hulks left behind, tanks, trucks, artillery pieces, became a grim museum of Russian failure. What the world witnessed was not an anomaly. It was a pattern, a nearly perfect echo of Operation Barbarossa in 1941, when Germany's seemingly unstoppable invasion of the Soviet Union collapsed under the weight of its own logistical overstretch. Then, as in 2022, arrogance met geography, and geography won. While the humiliation of the stalled convoy shocked the world, military historians immediately recognized the deeper significance. This disaster was not merely a logistical failure or a moment of bad luck. It was the culmination of a decade-long illusion that Russia had created about the strength of its modernized armed forces. On paper, Russia possessed a massive army, advanced armor platforms, precision missiles, electronic warfare capabilities, and a fleet of intimidating logistical vehicles. But the Kyiv convoy revealed the truth. Russia's modernization was shallow, largely cosmetic, and profoundly corrupted from within. The Kremlin had spent years showcasing new equipment during military parades, displaying gleaming rows of armor rolling past Moscow's Red Square. But a parade is not a battlefield, and polished metal does not reveal how deeply an institution is rotting. When the war demanded competence rather than spectacle, the facade collapsed. The world watched as an army advertised as one of the most powerful on Earth failed to do the most basic thing a modern force must do: keep moving. What makes the story of the 40-mile convoy so important is not just the spectacle of the traffic jam itself, but what it exposed about the future of warfare. It revealed that the ability to project power is no longer determined solely by the number of tanks you possess or the size of your formations. Instead, it is determined by your logistical agility, your technological adaptability, and your capacity to survive in an age where every inch of the battlefield is visible instantly through satellite imagery, civilian smartphones, and cheap drones. Russia's failure also proved another timeless truth. An army that cannot feed, fuel, or coordinate itself is not an army capable of offensive war. Firepower becomes irrelevant when your vehicles cannot start, when your fuel has been stolen, and when your soldiers are stranded with empty stomachs and dead radios. The convoy north of Kyiv became a cemetery of stalled ambition, and every rusted vehicle left behind told the same story. Logistics is destiny. The psychological effects on Russian troops were catastrophic. Isolated, freezing, and starving, many soldiers abandoned their vehicles, wandering off in search of food or simply surrendering to villagers. Others stayed inside their trucks, terrified of stepping into forests where Ukrainian special forces lurked like ghosts. Officers, desperate for answers, sent messages up the chain of command, messages that went unanswered. The longer the convoy sat motionless, the more it decayed, not just physically, but mentally. Fear became hunger, hunger became despair, and despair became collapse. The shockwaves of that collapse didn't end on the battlefield. They reverberated across the Russian political and military establishment. For years, Vladimir Putin had carefully cultivated an image of a revitalized Russian military. State media boasted of new divisions, new weapon systems, and new doctrine. But the convoy destroyed that myth in a matter of days. Many in Russia's leadership were forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had believed their own propaganda. What came next was panic. Russian generals scrambled to explain the disaster. The Kremlin blamed mythical saboteurs, bad weather, or NATO interference. None of these excuses could hide the obvious. The Russian army had been structurally hollowed out by corruption, incompetence, and decades of neglect. The convoy's failure was not a fluke. It was a mirror. Ukraine, meanwhile, took the opportunity to analyze and exploit every weakness the convoy revealed. Ukrainian intelligence officers quickly realized they were witnessing not just a stalled operation, but a rare, once-in-a-generation opportunity to understand the inner workings of their adversary. Each abandoned truck, each broken-down tank, each discarded ration pack told a story of how Russia planned, organized, and executed its operations. Ukrainian commanders studied these clues and adjusted their own strategies accordingly. The insights gained from that single, sprawling convoy would shape Ukraine's defensive playbook for months. But even beyond Ukraine and Russia, the lessons of the convoy rippled across the world. In Washington, London, Berlin, and Tokyo, military planners studied the satellite images intensely. Defense ministries issued internal reports warning that large, slow-moving mechanized formations are death traps in the modern era. A formation that would have been overwhelming in 1991 or even 2003 was now a glaring target. The age of massed convoys, they concluded, might be over for good. The Kyiv convoy showed that in a world where everything can be watched, tracked, and targeted, size is no longer an advantage, unless it is paired with speed, discipline, and logistical finesse. It highlighted the vulnerability of traditional mechanized warfare in the face of cheap, mobile, decentralized resistance armed with modern sensors and precision weapons. It demonstrated that a $1 million tank can be rendered worthless by a $50 drone. It exposed the brutal truth that even powerful nations can crumble if their logistics fail. That's why the story of the 40-mile convoy is already being taught in military academies across the world. Cadets study the images, trace the routes, analyze the breakdowns, and debate what could have been done differently. The consensus is always the same. Russia never understood its own limitations, and it underestimated Ukraine's ability to exploit them. Even within Russia, military theorists have been forced to confront the reality exposed by the convoy. Some have written quietly circulated papers arguing that the country must radically overhaul its logistical doctrine, abandon Soviet-era assumptions, and rebuild its supply systems from the ground up. Others have warned that unless Russia invests in proper maintenance, modern tires, reliable fuel depots, and decentralized command structures, future offensives will meet the same fate. Whether the Kremlin listens remains to be seen. By the time the convoy finally broke apart and scattered into nearby forests for cover, it was too late. Ukraine had taken the initiative, the momentum, and the psychological upper hand. The retreat from northern Ukraine was not simply a relocation, it was an admission of defeat. And as the retreating columns slunk back across the Belarusian border, the myth of Russian military invincibility evaporated. Global perceptions shifted dramatically. They are monuments, silent, grim markers of a war plan built on lies, executed with incompetence, and destroyed by reality. They are reminders that in war, the strongest army is not the one with the most tanks, but the one that can keep moving, keep fighting, and keep adapting. Russia's lightning war did not fail because of some dramatic battlefield defeat. It failed with a traffic jam, a colossal, unmoving, indefensible line of steel that showed the world the true state of the Russian war machine. A line of vehicles that turned from a threat into a tomb. A 40-mile lesson that will echo through military history as long as wars are studied. And in that sense, the Kyiv convoy is more than a military failure. It is a symbol, a symbol of the moment Russia's illusion of invincibility shattered, and the moment Ukraine proved that determination, ingenuity, and resilience can bring even the most imposing war machine to a grinding, humiliating halt.